Brian Blade. Mitch Mitchell. Keith Moon. Bonham. Elvin. I could go on. What do all these drummers have in common? Some have great chops, but others are more organic players. But they all play for the song. It's never about them. They're always trying to fit their thing into the music. And that's a way of being behind the drums. It's not the only way, but it's a good way. Look, we're drummers. We like to see chops. But for the vast majority of music listeners, a drum solo is something that happens once a concert, and usually at the end. Nobody who's not a drummer is walking around humming drum solos or drum fills. Instead, they're usually humming the song. And the best moments are when the band achieves something more together than the sum of the individual players. I did a whole video about this, jazz face moments. Here's one. Here's another. And this is another topic people have been asking me to cover for a couple years. Every so often, I'll get this comment. Can you make a video about playing for the song? So today, I'm tackling this behemoth. And it may not be completely what you expect. For instance, I have a small suspicion a lot of people want me to come out against choppy drummers. But choppy drummers sometimes play for the song too. But today we'll talk about how to approach it and some of the key elements. Playing for the song, today on 80/20. Stay tuned. And dudes, quick sponsor message before we get to the main theme of today's content. Come on, I give you like a 6-minute intro. Anyway, today's video is sponsored by me, the 80/20 drummer, and I'm going to leave you with a simple message. If you guys like the content today, if you want to learn more about playing the song and the component parts that come into that, we're going to talk about playing within your abilities. And if you want to increase those abilities, you should probably check out my free 3-video mini course. You can get it by clicking below the player and entering your email address in on the next page. Make you better in the next 3 weeks than you've gotten in the previous 6 months. Okay, onward. Let's first define what's playing for the song and what's not. Here's a clip of Nate Wood playing for the song in a non-choppy way. And here's a clip of Justin Brown playing for the song with some chops. And one of my favorites, Eric Harland. So for me, and I have to emphasize this is just my opinion, playing for the song means 2 things. First, somebody's in flow state, and they're usually not consciously thinking about playing this or that lick. Second, they're not thinking about stepping into the spotlight, as they would in a solo. And there's nothing wrong with a solo. It's a different thing when you're adding to the collective tension and release rather than stepping into the spotlight. Couple more examples. Here's Billy Kilson playing super intensely behind Chris Potter and Robin Eubanks, but still, in my opinion, serving the song. Here's Nate Wood doing the same thing with knee body. By the way, playing for the song also means choosing when not to play very much, or playing groove. We'll get there. But first, let's talk about flow state. Okay, let's talk about flow state. Oops, hat. So when I try to define this really broadly to people who haven't experienced it, or at least haven't experienced it on drums yet, it's kind of like when you're having a conversation with somebody and you're really passionate about a topic, you're not intellectually thinking about what word you're going to say next. You're just kind of vibing with it. And on drums or in jujitsu or when you're surfing, it's kind of the same thing. The drum incarnation is you're sort of just jamming along with yourself. You're not intellectualizing what you're going to play next. It's the same feeling you get when you're listening to a song, except you're participating in it. Be that as it may, let's now over-intellectualize this by breaking it down. So I think there are at least 3 parts to it. The map is not the territory, guys, but we're going to draw a map all the same. Part number 1 is being able to play what you hear. So if I hear bap-a-doo, bap-a-doo, bap-bap-bap. Right? Easier to do on drums than on piano, by the way. Next is being able to hear good ideas, because when I first started playing, and I think this is true of a lot of us, what I was able to imagine as a drum fill or a beat was limited. And the more you play, the more you listen, the broader that gets. Finally, number 3, and again, this is pretty arbitrary, it's just my taxonomy, is being able to curate or choose your moments. That might mean you're not going full chop fest every time you're playing a beat. Right? Maybe you're more... Just start there. Okay, I'm gonna hit you with some exercises. The first is featured in a course I called the Performance Course, which only saw the light of day once. Leave me a comment below if you want me to release it again. It was designed around helping people relieve their nervousness, and it had a small, devoted, but not very large following. Anyway, the Colin Stranahan exercise after one of my drum heroes, Colin Stranahan, who I had the privilege of interviewing a few years ago. Here's a clip of that. Colin Stranahan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So I think I'll just start by asking, what was the beginning of your kind of love affair with the drums? Anyway, the point is Colin played very simply, I think to illustrate a point, but also because he was hearing it that way. So the exercise is something like, just improvise, and as soon as you feel something get beyond your ability to hear it, just stop. Okay, so all that stuff's kind of under my hands, but what happens if you have a much simpler vocabulary? There's a lot of drummers with way more, but what if you have a little bit less? What if you're a little earlier in the journey? That's fine. But the point is, you're playing along. And say you start to get out a little bit beyond your ability, just stop, reset the exercise and come back, and just make sure you're playing everything that's firmly within what you already understand. So really quickly, there are 4 ways you can do this. I mean, there might be more than 4, but there are 4 that I can think of. So one is just groove. Right? So you play something like that, keep it within your ability, but try to explore. If it gets beyond your ability, stop. The point of the stopping is you're just registering that in your head. It's like, oh, I went beyond it. So you teach yourself to stay within it. So there's also out of time stuff. Right, you can think about that as like a song outro or a song intro sort of thing, or just free improv. So the third is soloing, but in time. I don't know why I went there, I just did. And the 4th, I just wrote solo. So I guess that just means there were 3 because we just did solo. How do you hear better ideas? How do you expand the scope? I want to keep this lesson short, so I'm going to link to another video here. It's either going to be the one I shot in Taiwan or a more recent one talking about a constraint exercise you can do for yourself, which will help expand your ability. But let's get back to Nate in the newsroom. But what about self-consciousness? One of the biggest obstacles to getting out of your head is getting nervous when people are watching you. And once you're worried about what the audience thinks, you're no longer playing for the song. So let's talk about it. So now we come back to this subject that I covered in my course that I called the Performance Course. Again, if you'd like more info about that, get at me below in the comments. The first is what we already covered before, which is you can practice staying within what you can already do. By the way, I keep harping on this because it's something John Riley told me ages ago. But the second is learning to trust yourself more. I know this sounds like a cop-out, but it's kind of a long-term process. But I think about skiing or BJJ. I've done a number of competitions, and by the time you step on the mats for competition, you've been going to class 4 days a week for like 8 months. That's a lot of practice already. And what happens is you're nervous. You slap hands, they say fight, and then all of a sudden instinct just takes over. And you either win or lose, but you're just flowing with it. Same thing with ski racing. I grew up in the Rockies. I wasn't a particularly good skier, but everybody skied, so I did ski racing. And same thing, you'd be nervous, you'd be up in the starting gate until the bell rang, you get down the course, and then all of a sudden you'd just be solving the problems at hand. So you get enough experience and you start whatever's going on in the audience, you just get a core of something. It just kind of comes out of you. But I will talk about the comfort challenges because there's a way you can also increase your comfort in public. You know who's not nervous is people who play tons of gigs, but it's tough. We can't all just go out and get gigs, especially in the... So I came up with some ways to simulate that, which are the obvious ones, but in escalating order. The first one is just post videos of yourself regularly. You can do TikTok, you can do Instagram, you can do YouTube Shorts. The second is go live. So go live on YouTube, go live on Instagram, and actually play for people in real time. The third, and this might be a little more difficult for you depending on where you practice or like what the rules are in your part of the country or world, but invite somebody in to your practice space and just say, hey, I want to play for you for a little bit. I'd like to get your feedback, right? The real human in front of you. And fourth is another thing that, depending on where you are in the world, might be easier or harder, which is busking. If you have the gumption to take your drums to a public park or a subway, play in front of a lot of people, make sure you check out your local rules because you may get yelled at. You may get a ticket. And then finally, of course, playing gigs, right? Playing gigs, top of the pyramid. But I know this sounds a little pat or like a cop-out, like, yeah, just go get after it, buddy. But it's really not, because you could spend all of your time in the practice room just learning more chops, or you could prioritize getting into flow state, section 1, and increasing your comfort playing for people, section 2. Work on this stuff, make it a priority, and you'll find it easier to get out of your head. But what about knowing what not to play or knowing when to just support the groove? These things fall into a category I'd call taste. And I wish I could tell you some kind of simple secret for this, but my biggest secret is honestly just get bored. Let me explain what I mean. To keep this super brief, what I do when I practice is mostly just exploratory improv. Let me show you. Get the AirPods in so I can have a little metronome. So what I did was I put the metronome on, it was on 9/8. I had it on 16th note offbeats. I had it on the pickup in the first 2 of the bars. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I was just playing along with that. And I was improvising around a groove, and I do a lot of this. And what'll happen is I'll start to get bored with stuff. I'll start to get bored with playing the same stuff over and over again. So this lives and dies by consistency. This lives and dies by having a certain thing I'm working on every day for a period of like 3 months practice course, so that I have time to get it really deeply ingrained so I can get bored, so I can start to explore different textures with it. And a lot of times the really obvious things, the really choppy things are going to get old. And then you're going to start to explore leaving space and doing different non-obvious things. The other thing is, as we were talking about in the previous segment, you get a confidence with it. Like, oh, this is old hat. I know this. And that's my slightly rambling, wide-ranging attempt to throw my arms around this. Let me know what you think. Either way, that's how you get the gig. I'll end this video with an anecdote. I was doing a call the other week with one of my new students to the coaching program my friend, the intrepid Jacob Evans, is administering.
I'm just here to bring the groove to the people.
And as I recall, he was asking me how I got confident that I was playing real jazz. And I think I responded that after a certain point, I'd spent enough time with the music that I think I just started trusting that my ideas were valid. I was no longer playing something and wondering, is this really jazz? Of course, I'm still listening to myself on recordings and seeing stuff that swings and some stuff that doesn't, but I'm no longer looking over my shoulder for approval, if that makes sense. And that's where you want to get when you're playing for the song. In one sense, it's really unselfish because you're thinking outwardly about how the band sounds as a whole, rather than just your instrument. But you're also almost a little bit cocky because you trust your ideas. And that's something all the greats have in common, chops or not. Anyway, hope you guys have enjoyed this one. And if you did, you might be thinking about how to take your own playing to the next level. We discussed some ways to get out of your head and to play within your ability level, but maybe you want to extend that ability level. And maybe you want some more detailed exercises that'll help you implement the things you learned in this video. Funny you should ask, introducing my 3-video mini course. It's free. And you can get it by clicking the link below the player and entering your email address in on the next page. That's 3 videos that make your playing better in the next 3 weeks than it's gotten in the previous 6 months. Dudes, it's been real. Always enjoy these. See you again real soon in another lesson of the week. Is this really jazz?